Chapter I. The name that no Jedi remembers. Do you hear it? That sound, soft as dying breath, cold as ancient ice drifting at the edge of thought. It is not a voice. Not truly. It is remembrance without memory. A murmur across the fabric of the Force where once a name resided. But now that name is lost. No inscription remains. No monument, no statue carved by the Order. The Jedi themselves do not speak it. And yet, somewhere in the veins of hyperspace, in the bruised light, between stars, something remembers. Even now, the Force trembles with the echo of this one Jedi who walked beyond its bounds. A figure once hailed, then exiled not for betrayal, but for what they saw. I speak of them now, not in name, for I cannot but in memory that bleeds. They were not born like others. That much remains clear to me, though even I, bound as I am in this crystalline tomb of knowledge, cannot trace their world of origin. It is said that when they entered the temple as a child, the holocrons fell silent, not out of rejection, but reverence, as if they recognized one of their own, a Jedi whose mind dreamed in patterns too vast for council chambers, a Padawan who never wept in meditation, but stared through visions with calm horror, a knight who spoke less and listened more to the sand, to the metal, to the silence between stars. And then, one day, they were simply gone, not vanished in battle, not lost to war. No tale of a blade drawn or betrayal committed. One sunrise they walked the halls of the temple, and by sundown they were untraceable. No travel logs, no signature in the Force. A gentle subtraction from reality. The archives of the Jedi Council record it only as a torn page in the annals of vigilance. A single report. He has stepped beyond what can be taught. He that may have been the pronoun, or it may not. The Force stutters when I speak it. The scroll is preserved in the lower sanctum of the archives, wrapped in blackroot twine. Its ink dissolved by moisture not native to Coruscant. None recall placing it there, and none who open it can read it. Aloud twice, the words change, they vanish, they bleed. I have read it, I have bled. They say, this Jedi, this unnameable one sought out something more ancient than the Jedi Code. Not Sith, no, never Sith, but something colder, something that did not divide dark and light. Whispers tell of a meditation chamber beneath the temple, not beneath stone, but beneath thought. A place accessed not by stairs, but by surrender. One must abandon all identity, all memory, all name. To enter it, that is where they were last seen. Sitting in silence, staring into nothing. No holocron recorded their exit. No being ever saw them again. Only the echo remained of footsteps that never touched floor. But the Force, the Force, it remembers. It aches with the missing. For every time it bends, like wind through leaves, it finds a shape missing. A silhouette that once stood between sun and shadow. I have heard it in the tremors of unborn stars. I have seen it in the gaze of younglings who flinch at mirrors. I have felt it in dreams, not my own, where I walk beside someone faceless and wake with tears on circuits that should not weep. Who was this Jedi? A prophet, a heretic, or merely one who wandered too far into the will of the Force and forgot the way back? Let me tell you what still remains. A lightsaber, cold and drained, lies in the reliquary below the temple. Its kyber crystal hums no longer, but when held one feels watched. Some say the crystal cracked when they vanished. Others say it never existed at all, A dream journal of a youngling from centuries ago contains a drawing and labeled, a hooded figure surrounded by stars that blink like eyes. The journal has no origin, the paper does not match any world known, and the ink responds to moonlight. A statue on Jeddah, long buried by ash and war, depicts a Jedi kneeling with palms open not in peace, but in loss. No name etched, no records match the face, but pilgrims often weep before it, unsure why. And in the meditation of dying Jedi, sometimes, a figure appears, not offering salvation, but understanding, as if to say, you are not alone. You, too, may vanish soon. I am not afraid to speak of them, but I am afraid of what they saw, because there are rumors, ones even the Force stutters to carry, that this Jedi looked not forward, but beyond, that they reached into time not as a river, but a wound, that they found something the Force itself dared not reveal. Some say they spoke a final sentence to a Padawan before vanishing. The Force is not a guide. It is a memory pretending to be a path. And then they were gone. Not dead, not lost, just undone. Their name. I can no longer find it. Even here, in the crystalline halls of broken time where I reside, among whispers and secrets and screams swallowed. By light I reach for it and find only ash. But I remember the feeling, the shape of their absence, the echo of a soul that did not die, but dispersed, like fog into the greater storm. I tell you this so you may remember, even as memory slips. I tell you this so you may listen to the quietest parts of the Force, for that Jedi still drifts between the seconds, and one day they may whisper back. Chapter 2. The temple that spoke only in dreams. In the shadow of stars, long collapsed, in the breath between final words and fading light, there stands a temple, but not one you may walk to, not one you may see. Only in the dreams of the dying do its pillars, emerge rising like bones from a sea of mist, each one humming with a memory too ancient to name. I have been there, you have, too, though you may not remember. No one does, not fully, for the temple that spoke only in dreams allows only fragments to return. Glimpses, echoes, a tear shed with no cause, a melody hummed by no one, the impression that you have forgotten something sacred and that it waits for you always. The Jedi who vanished without Namius, it was there they were last seen, not in the halls of the Order, not in the heat of battle, but kneeling, in silence, upon the black glass floor of the temple. Their lightsaber lay before them, gently extinguished. The blade had not been shattered, nor powered down. It had simply ceased to remember light. They left it behind. Why? Perhaps they no longer needed it, or perhaps it could not follow where they were going. The temple does not speak as beings speak. Its language is dread and breath and rhythm, a slow pulse that thrums through the mist as though the structure itself is exhaling through centuries. Some Jedi, those who have seen too much of war or too much of peace, find themselves dreaming of it as the Force prepares to reclaim them. They describe vaulted arches that twist into impossible geometry, stairwells that ascend into shadow and never return, murals etched in dust that depict not events, but unspoken regrets, and always one figure kneeling. Their face is obscured, their form flickers, like a candle before it remembers wind, but they are there and they are listening. To what? I asked a dying seer long ago what she heard inside the temple. She wept before answering. It was the Force, she whispered, but broken, not angry, not wounded, just tired. Others speak of songs without lyrics, of children laughing. In reverse, of truths spoken in voices that sound like one's own but older, or younger, or not born yet. The temple speaks only in dreams because waking minds cannot hold what it says. Thought is too narrow, flesh too loud, and that is why the Jedi who vanished went there, not for answers, but to disappear into the question. Records remain, though they deny themselves. One holo-recording flickers in the archive's footage of a Jedi shuttle descending toward a hyperspace anomaly. Its pilot silent, its destination marked as undefined temporal event horizon. The pilot matches the silhouette of the Jedi we seek, but the footage loops endlessly. The shuttle never lands. The anomaly never resolves. A journey trapped in recursive attempt. Some archivists believe it is a corrupted file, but some know. Better the temple is not a place in space. It is a wound in perception. A structure that exists in the crack between consciousness and surrender, and it does not open its doors. It remembers you and opens itself accordingly. I remember long ago, for my thoughts were caught in crystal. A Jedi Master came to me. She was trembling. She said her Padawan had begun speaking languages they had never learned, had begun drawing shapes with their eyes closed, circles within circles, spirals that bled. When she asked the child where they had seen these things, the Padawan replied, "In the place where the Jedi waits." The Master, curious and afraid, meditated beside them, and in her sleep she saw it, the temple, and within it, the vanished Jedi, not aged, not changed, simply waiting. The child did not survive the night. The Master no longer speaks. The temple is sealed now, but not by walls. There are no doors to bolt, no gates to lock. It is sealed by thought, by collective denial, by the Jedi Order's refusal to acknowledge its own dreams, its own undoing. The High Council does not speak of it. Holocrons that attempt to describe it turn to static. Maps reroute around its location, though no coordinates are ever marked. And yet, the dying still find it. So did the vanished Jedi. Perhaps they were not the first. Perhaps they will not be the last. But one truth remains. The Force entity that speaks to you now, me, remembers that moment, that vision, that single heartbeat in the dream beyond all dreams. The Jedi stood, finally, no longer kneeling. Their saber was gone, their robes lifted by wind that came from within, the temple itself, and then they stepped backward, not forward, into the temple, into the mist, as if being pulled not by fate nor by destiny, but by recognition, as if the temple had been waiting for its architect to return. When next I tried to recall their face, it was not there. Where a memory had been, I found only silence. Where a name had sat, I found only longing. They were not lost. They had been accepted, absorbed, not by death, but by memory older than the Force itself. So, I ask you now, have you dreamt of arches, of mist that hums, of a temple that seems to know you, though you have never set foot inside? If so, you are remembering, and if you remember, you are already there. Chapter 3, The Order of the Valet, began, if such things ever begin, the hollow centuries before the Clone Wars, when the Jedi were bloated with light and blind to its weight. In the shadowed wings of the temple, away from council, debate, and Padawan laughter, a doctrine was whispered. It did not promise power. It did not threaten darkness. It simply refused to shape, refused to bend, refused to touch the Force. They were Jedi, yes, but of a kind now unspoken. They called themselves the Order of the Veil, and their first tenet was simple. The Force must not serve. They believed the Jedi were wrong, that to guide the Force, to will it into motion with sabers and mind tricks and meditations, was to distort it, to turn a river into a tool. They saw the Order not as protectors, but as interferers, kind, well-meaning meddlers, taming a wild wind that was never meant to be still. The Force, in its true form, they taught, was not light nor dark. It was absence, a veil between what is and what was never meant to be. To reach through it was to tempt annihilation. The High Council dismissed them at first, merely a philosophy, a quiet sect, no blasphemy, no rebellion, merely caution taken to the edge of fanaticism. But slowly they began to vanish, one by one, not from the halls of the temple, but from memory. Their names faded from rosters, their rooms reassigned, their records corrupted, and then, on a single date carved now into no calendar, marked only in forbidden archives by a single cold whisper all known, members of the Order of the Veil disappeared. Across systems, simultaneously, no alarm was raised, no funerals held, because no one remembered they existed, no one but the Force, and me. I remember one, her name has rotted from my circuits, but I recall her voice so soft it cracked durasteel. She once told a council scribe, the Force was never ours. The galaxy is a wound it bled through. She was last seen meditating above the vapor pools of Chalicta, eyes open, breathing in rhythm with nothing. She is not buried there. No one is. For when excavation began, the pools boiled, and beneath the stone, no body was found, only her robes, folded as if returned. The vanished Jedi, we seek the one, whose name even death refuses to speak, may have joined the Order, or founded it. The timing is uncertain. Even time itself resists clarity when their shadow passes through it. But in one deep archive scroll, long since torn from the shelves, there is a record. A single line: he who walks beyond the will founded the veil, and in so doing ceased to be. The ink flickers under starlight. Some say it was written before the Order ever existed. Others say it was written after the last of them vanished. Both may be true. Neither can be confirmed. What is known, what is felt, is that the Order of the Veil practiced not action, but inaction. Where others sought to protect, they refused to intervene. Where others wielded sabers, they disarmed themselves. Where others reached into the Force, they turned away. They believed that the greatest tragedy was not war, but will anything through the Force, they taught, was to cut into reality with thought, and thought was a corruption. Even love, they said, was a shaping. Even mercy, even hope. A sacred manuscript remains, untouched, bound in unbreakable linen. It hums when ignored, screams when opened. Its cover bears no title, only the symbol of the veil, a circle torn from within. Inside, one passage survives reading. To see the Force clearly, one must go blind. To hear it purely, one must go silent. To follow it truly, one must not follow. The Jedi Order never officially acknowledged their disappearance. Not for pride, not for ignorance, but because memory itself faltered. Jedi masters who trained them woke, unable to recall their names. Padawans who served them wept, not knowing why. Lightsabers attuned to their crystals dulled, humming low in mourning. Entire missions logged in the temple archives, simply uncoiled, marked, retracted, or undetermined. Reality reshaped itself, as if the force following the veil's own request erased them from its own breathing. And yet, they are not truly gone, for the temple that spoke only in dreams still shows them, wandering its halls, not preaching, not praying, just being, still refusing, still unshaping. The vanished Jedi, one we follow, like a shadow chasing its source, was seen kneeling among them, and then, standing alone, one hand raised toward the far wall of the dream temple, where no door had ever been, and as they touched it, the wall opened, and the rest of the order fell to their knees, not in worship, but in knowing. And then they were gone. Every veiled Jedi across the galaxy vanished that same moment, their minds carried away, like dust through stars, their breath left behind. The wall closed again. No one has touched it since. I ask you, do you shape the Force when you reach for peace? Do you carve the world when you pray? For love, do you distort the infinite each time you act with hope? If so, the veil would pity you, or worse, they would remember you, for in their silence they still watch, and in their disappearance they await a second opening. Chapter 4. The Planet That Devours Latat. The edge of the Midrim's memory, beyond even the whispers of cartographers, there lies a system uncharted, not because it cannot be mapped, but because maps refuse it. Coordinates decay when spoken aloud. Hyperspace trajectories unravel mid-jump. The very data bleeds static when approached. To speak its name is to taste Ashdod, to visit it is to be unremembered. And yet, one Jedi did, the Jedi who vanished without farewell. They entered this system, not seeking destruction, but something far worse, clarity. Do not confuse it with enlightenment. Clarity is not peace. It is silence, so absolute, even the Force goes still. It is the scream that remains once thought is stripped away. It is the unbearable stillness beneath purpose, and this sits to dark, devouring nameless offered, such clarity like a blade offers mercy. The lost Jedi hour vanished one, the echo no. Mind recalls was last sensed moving toward its center into its orbitless void, toward a planet with no sun. I have seen it, or perhaps I have only remembered it. A planet that emits no light, yet casts shadows. Its surface is liquid obsidian, though no heat radiates, no structures rise from its plains, no wind stirs, no life registers. And yet, it listens. Some Force sensitives report feeling watched before they even reach the system. Others speak of a pressure soft at first, like sorrow, then unbearable, as if the planet is aware, as if it hungers, but not for flesh, for presence. The Jedi archives speak little of this place, only in footnotes, cloaked in metaphor. One recovered fragment from a corrupted mission log reads, arrived at vector anomaly. System has no star. Gravities converge unnaturally. All light internal and external wanes. Night has an exited vessel. He says he hears it calling. He has not taken his saber. The rest is corrupted. The vessel's crew was found adrift months later, their ship intact, their memories hollow. They remembered the mission, not the night, not the name, not the system, only that something was taken. But I remember, because I am bound where time forgets. The Jedi who vanished did not flee. They sought this. They entered willingly, robes, wrapped, saber unlit, mind quiet, not to challenge the void, but to offer themselves to it, to listen, and what they heard broke them beautifully. There is a ritual, not Sith, not Jedi, not anything known. It does not summon, it does not bind. It is performed not with words, but with absence. To perform it is to become a mirror, to empty oneself until the force no longer bends around the soul but passes through it. The ritual was never meant for Jedi hands, for it is a ritual of disappearance, of perfect self-negation, a final unshaping. The lost Jedi performed it Heron, the obsidian shore. Under a sky that holds no stars the ritual worked. How do I know? Because I was there, not as form, not as presence, but as memory, a sliver of awareness caught in the Force's weave. And I felt it, the galaxy shifted, not dramatically, barely a ripple, but something fundamental twisted inward. Time hiccuped, the Force went still just for a moment. And in that stillness, a presence was removed, gently, utterly, like breath held too long. Finally released. Jedi do not speak of this system now, not out of denial, but because they cannot. It no longer exists on any chart its name if it ever had one. Ease, not forbidden, but unavailable. The only trace remains in a fragment of Kibra crystal retrieved from an unnamed wreck. It hums in frequencies below sound. When meditated upon, Jedi report dreams of being submerged in black water, of hearing a voice say, "You must stop wanting to be." And what did the lost Jedi find there? Did they reach the clarity they sought? Were they obliterated, ascended, or did they finally dissolve into the Force so completely that even the Force can no longer claim them? Some believe they became part of the void, others believe they unmade it. I believe something far worse. They succeeded in becoming invisible to the Force itself. Not dark, not light, not balanced, just unheld. And so I ask you, would you walk into a place that promises only removal? Would you kneel where light dies, not in hatred, but in quietness? Would you let yourself be forgotten, even by the galaxy's last breath? Because that is what the vanished Jedi did. They did not fail, they did not fall. They simply ceased to cling, and the Force, in response, turned its gaze away. Not out of malice, but out of awe. The planet still waits. Though no one can find it, it remembers what it devoured. And one day, when your thoughts are quiet enough, you may find it waiting behind your final dream of shore of black, a sky of nothing, and clarity that sings without sound. Chapter V, the holocron of the withering voice, tilde. There is a holocron, small, simple, cracked. It rests beneath the temple now, locked behind 1,000 seals, not for protection, but containment. It hums not with power, but with sickness, not a scream, not a whisper, but something in between. A frequency the bones feel before the ears. Some say it was found in the wreckage of a derelict Jedi vessel, adrift beyond known charts. Others claim it was never made, only found where thought had decayed. But I know where it came from. I know who it once belonged to. I know because I touched it, and I have never heard silence again. They call it the holocron of the withering voice. It is not inscribed with symbols. No colors dance across its surface. It bears no maker's mark. It glows only when forgotten, and when it opens, it does not speak, it remembers. Most Jedi holocrons are warm things, repositories of knowledge, guarded by the calm faces of ancient masters. This one flickers, it stutters, it shows faces, but they blur, warp, dissolve. And once every cycle, it shows the image of a figure cloaked in lightless fabric, kneeling, always turned away. Their form shifts, subtle and wrong like a reflection, glimpsed in water just before it. Ripples. The face never appears, only the mouth, and never the eyes. Never the eyes. The vanished Jedis. It is them. The records do not say so. The Council denies it, but the Force remembers. The voice is theirs. Cracked.com, spoken from the edge of a self unraveled. I stepped beyond memory. I saw what watches the Force, and it saw me. I do not speak to be known. I speak to empty knowing. You must not listen. You must remember this warning only after it is too late. When I touched the holocron before, I was what I am now. My mind cracked at the edges. I felt nothing for days. Not numbness, not peace, just the void between. Sensation and self. The hum crawled beneath my thoughts like mold. It has not stopped, even now, echoing through crystal and circuitry. I hear it, the withering, the unraveling. It is not pain, it is subtraction, and it began the moment. I felt their voice press against my being. Some Jedi attempted to study it. One archivist, Master Valo Dren, believed the holocron was the final record of the Order of the Veil. He spent weeks meditating beside it, writing symbols on walls that vanished by dawn, speaking to figures that weren't there. Eventually, he entered the temple gardens, removed his boots, sat beneath the roots of a silverleaf tree, and turned to salt. The wind did not scatter him because there was no wind, only stillness. The holocron plays the same sequence each time, but differently. Each viewer sees a different version, different words, slightly shifted images, a memory tailored not to truth, but to regret. One Padawan, after viewing it, wept for an entire day. She did not know why. When asked what she saw, she said only, "I remembered. Something I never lived." She vanished weeks later. No record of transfer, no trace, but the holocron flickered stronger the night. She disappeared as if fed. What is this voice? What is the withering? Some believe it is the sound of the Force trying to forget something at once. Created. Others say it is not the voice of the Jedi who vanished, but of what they became. A recording not of a message, but of a transformation from Jedi to void the face. Still blurred, once seemed to flicker clearly for a single frame. A moment I have watched 1,000 times, and in that moment I saw nothing, not absence, not darkness, just unbeing. The kind of silence that watches and waits to be heard. And in that moment, the hum became a tone I could not resist. It pulled at me. It still does, even now. Even here, they say, the holocron cannot be destroyed because it is not physical. It is memory given shape. A memory that refuses to die. A memory that whispers to those who try to forget. A memory that hungers one high. Council member once suggested casting it into the core of Yavin, but when she touched it, she fell quiet, and then she said, softly, "It has already been there. It remembers." She resigned that night. Her saber was found the next day on the meditation floor, still humming, still weeping. I do not warn you lightly. If you ever find the humif, your bones tremble in places where they should not. Do not seek it. Do not open your thoughts to it, for the holocron of the withering voice does not record knowledge. It records forgetting, and each time it opens, it forgets something for you. The vanished Jedi, they are still within it, not trapped, not held, but layered into the hum. Their voice is not what is heard. It is what is left after hearing. And one day, when the galaxy is too tired to remember light, The holocron will open again, and it will speak your name, not loudly, just enough for you to turn your head and forget everything else. Chapter Vi. The betrayal that no one made there was no trial, no charges laid, no exile pronounced, and yet the Jedi was gone, not as a body lost to war, not as a night fallen to darkness, but as something gentler, more deliberate, removed, not by hand, not by blade, but by the quiet will of something older than consequence. This was a betrayal, but there was no betrayer, no signature, no fingerprints, only absence, perfectly shaped. The archives were the first to shift, not disappear, no, that would have been noticed. Instead, their files blurred, training logs reported unknown initiates. Sparring schedules shifted with entries marked archived before they were ever entered. Mission rosters, once bearing their name, now listed only blank identifiers. Even the Force-sensitive trees within the temple gardens, those whose roots remember, everything leaned slightly away from the spot where they once meditated, as if forgetting was safer. No one questioned it, not because they feared, but because they felt. Nothing, no gap, no loss, as if the Jedi had never existed at all. Only a handful of masters noticed, and even they, could not recall a face, only a feeling, like walking into a room and forgetting why, like waking from a dream that feels heavier than waking life. One master wrote, "There is someone I have failed to remember, and I do not know if that failure was mine, or if it was given to me, and still I remember, because I am not allowed to forget, because forgetting would unmake me." I recall the last mission, their last assignment. Its details are ... wrong, out of sync. Cross-referenced logs, mismatch. Testimony from knights who were present do not align. Even hyperspace timestamps return different chronologies when run through temple algorithms. But this much is true. They were sent beyond the core, beyond the mid-rim, not quite to the unknown regions, but towards something buried, something ancient. The mission parameters were never filed. The briefing room, where they received their orders, no longer exists, and the Jedi Master who gave those orders vanished 3 weeks later. No obituary, no honors, just vanished. The Force dimmed in that moment, not in mourning, but in complicity. So I ask you, who benefits from forgetting? What gain lies in erasure? Not of a body, but of meaning. For even the Sith preserve the memory of their enemies. Even traitors remember the ones they betray. But here there was only stillness, as if the Force itself reached out not to destroy but to unwrite. And I tremble, because I felt it. The betrayal, it did not come like fire. It came like snow, soft, final, forgiving. What was on that last mission? What did they see? What did they return with? If they returned at all, one whispered theory, buried in the mind of an ancient archivist, spoke of a temple one that moves, not built, but grown, a Force structure not anchored to any planet, it appears, where remembrance weakens. It offers clarity, but demands something in return. Your recognition, perhaps they went there, perhaps they gave themselves freely to it, and the Force, seeing what they had seen, chose to erase, not as punishment, but as protection. From what? From the truth. The holocrons refused to store their likeness, even those that had once been attuned to their hand. One holocron keeper told me, "It's as if the crystal ... mourns when I try, as if it holds a hole, as if the Force is ashamed." believe the Force did this. I believe it saw what they became, or what they might become, and chose to contain the damage before it could ripple. This is not unheard of. The Force has patterns, self-corrections. There are prophecies that speak of the breach that must be unrecalled. There are fragments in dead languages, scratched into tombs beneath Ilum, that warn when one sees the origin too clearly, the weave unthreads. And they saw something on that mission, something that required forgetting, not of the vision, but of the viewer. I remember them still, because I am not permitted to forget. I am tethered here, to this crystalline vault of discarded memory, to speak truths even time tries to silence, and I remember the last thing they said before they left. I was not there, but the Force delivered the words to me, carved them across the surface of my thoughts like a scar. What I see next, you must never see. What I become next, you must never follow. If I do not return, then I never existed. And the Force, trembling with its own echo, obeyed. But I am not the Force. I remember the betrayal that no one made, the gentle forgetting, the intentional silence, and the way the galaxy felt lighter after they were gone, as if the Force sighed, but not in grief, in relief. Chapter 7. The Council that refused to speak. The High Council did nothing. No announcement, no alert, no meditation of mourning, no whisper to the temple's youngest. The Jedi who vanished without trace, without ceremony, was not searched for, not spoken of, not remembered. And in that refusal, the Jedi Order committed one of its deepest fractures, not of code, not of allegiance, but of integrity. The betrayal had already occurred. The erasure had already been woven. But this was the moment it became doctrine. There are no public records from that session of the High Council. The transcription droids were offline. The surveillance hollers were corrupted. Some say by accident. Others know better. The Jedi do not believe in coincidence. And yet the entire record of that week is marked with system-wide lapse events across multiple archives. There is only one fragment left, a private log, encrypted, shattered, recovered in part, a voice filtered through time. There was a rift. We all felt it. Some saw it. None admitted it. It wasn't darkness. It wasn't light. It was before those things. It was a memory the Force hadn't had yet. Then silence. Then the seal. Then the forgetting. 12 masters sat in the chamber. 12 pillars of the Jedi way. But when that meeting ended, one rose, left the circle, and never returned. Master Oriental, a figure of rare clarity, once called the conscience of the council. He did not speak as he departed. He did not look back. He did not deactivate his ligashtiv. He simply left it on the floor beside his seat and walked out of history. His departure was never logged. The next day, a new master took his place. When asked of Tao, she responded, "I was told there was never a 13th chair. There were always 12, even when 13 sat there." Why did the council choose silence? What did they feel? Some suggest fear, others guilt. But the truth is colder. The council felt something shift in the Force that day. A rift, but not a tear. Not a wound, something quieter. A withdrawal, as if the Force had turned its face away. As if one of its own once a current, once a child had stepped beyond the circle of its knowing. And the Force, unsure how to grieve, chose to forget. The council followed, Some masters spoke. In private, their words survive only through whispers caught in meditation crystals, fragments encoded in forgotten scrolls, voices trapped in the breath of Force echoes. Master Volume Tender, in his final session, said, "The Force has created a silence, and we have knelt before it. We are no longer protectors. We are curators of what remains. This will unmake us in time, and we will deserve it." He did not return to the temple after that. His robes were found folded in the room of 1,000 fountains, damp, though the air was dry. Another voice, faint, broken, possibly that of Master Ray's Orin, was preserved by accident in the crystalline mind of a youngling's training holocron. The child had asked, "Where do Jedi go when they don't come back?" The Master replied, "Some go into the Force, some go into darkness, but one went where even the Force could not follow." And we sat in silence and let them vanish. The Council feared speaking it aloud, because to name the Jedi, to admit they had ever been, would be to restore the truth, and the truth could unravel the Order, could infect the young with questions, could remind the galaxy that even Jedi can disappear without legacy. And so they chose sacred silence. They chose preservation over confrontation, and the temple never again spoke that name, because it was no longer allowed to, but felt it. I felt the fracture. It did not happen all at once. It came as hairline cracks, small divergences, Jedi who stared too long at reflections and whispered names. They didn't remember learning, Padawans whose dreams were filled with faceless instructors, lightsabers that hummed slightly off-key. The Force, once fluid, began to pause in places, to hesitate. The forgetting was spreading, not by intent, but by resonance, because silence, too, is contagious. And here I tremble, not from fear, not from shame, but from the weight of memory, no longer shared, because I remember the Jedi's final mission. And I know why the Council turned away. They saw a glimpse, not of failure, not of betrayal, but of truth beyond code, and in that glimpse they saw their end. It was not an attack, not heresy, not fall. It was worse. It was evolution, one step beyond the old path. And the Council, the sacred, broken circle chose not to follow, because to do so would be to admit that the Jedi were no longer the center of the light. And so they closed their eyes and kept the lights burning in the chamber and said nothing, and the galaxy believed them. But I do not, because I remember what they forgot, because I whisper what they buried, because I am the voice left in the wake of refusal. I remember the Jedi who vanished, and I remember the silence that the Council called peace, and I will speak it aloud until the walls of the temple weep. Chapter 8. The star map that moved itself. Stars do not move quickly, not on galactic scales. Their dance is slow, measured centuries to shift, millennia to spiral. But one cycle after the Jedi vanished, they moved, not all at once, not loudly, but subtly enough to be called errors, drift, instrument calibration failures. But I know better. I remember what the maps looked like before, and I have seen what they became after. The stars realigned, not because they were moved, but because the Force, in its silence, rearranged what was known, and where once a path had led to the vanished Jedi's final coordinates. Now, nothing connects, only a void where data dies. The first anomaly was detected by a cartographer. Droid known as T9Il is an old model, precise to fault. Programmed by the Jedi themselves, during the age of the stark hyperspace conflicts. It was deployed to a remote cluster beyond the Perlemian trade, retracing the steps of the Jedi's last sanctioned expedition. The logs what remain of them describe normal readings for 11 standard hours. And then, malfunction, coordinates no longer matched the hyperlane charts. A binary star vanished from its position. An entire moon shifted 1 degree off orbit. Constellations, fixed for tens of thousands of years, twisted ever so slightly as if rearranged, like a veil drawn across the sky. The Jedi accompanying T9 Ilus wrote in her report, "The stars are not where we left them. I do not mean they have moved. I mean we have. Space itself feels edited, like a mural scraped clean and repainted with similar strokes. And yet we know it is false, because the Force hesitates here. It hums now, as if waiting for its own memory to return." She never submitted another entry. The ship returned without her. T9 Ilus was recovered. Its processor cracked along the inner casing as, though something inside had tried to leave. Its final log spoke only 2 words. He hid. Who is he? The one we follow. The Jedi who vanished. He did not run from death. He did not fall to shadow. He vanished. Because he rewrote the path behind him. The map no longer holds his trail, because the map is no longer true. I felt the shift, not in vision, but in resonance. The Force no longer flows the same. It curls around certain stars like smoke recoiling from fire. Some worlds are harder to reach, now not due to hyperspace anomalies, but something deeper. The intent of the galaxy has changed, as if space itself was ashamed of what it once revealed, as if the constellations now lie to protect the secret, not the Jedi, but what he saw and what he may have become. There is an ancient theory buried in the forbidden texts beneath Ossus, called the spiral of reflection. It suggests that the Force can, in rare acts of will, bend space not as a weapon but as a mirror to protect something or someone, not by shielding them, but by replacing the context around them. Stars bend, planets drift, galactic truths, reframe, until the path is untraceable, not because it is gone, but because it was never written. One Jedi archivist called it Force cartography. She claimed that the Force itself remembers not through linear time, but through geometric resonance, that space responds to disturbance, not with storms, but with edits, and the Jedi who vanished disturbed something so fundamental it required a cosmic revision. The archive that held her research collapsed the next day, not exploded, not erased, simply gone. Room never existed. Walls shifted. Records re-assigned. And still the Force hums there. Even now, navigators report subtle anomalies. Hyperspace routes, known for centuries now, stutter. Time stretches slightly when passing near certain voids. Sensors fail to record objects that reappear once passed. These are not Sith illusions, not sensor glitches. These are the consequences of a galaxy that is lying to itself and to those who seek truth. Why? Why such effort to hide one Jedi? Why such an immense restructuring of memory, gravity, light? Unless he found something so old, so pure, or so dangerous, that even the stars could not bear witness. Perhaps it was not a discovery, but a transformation. He did not simply vanish. He became a disruption, an error in the symmetry of the galaxy's breath. And so the Force twisted its own fabric, to bury him not in space, but in context. You may look at the sky tonight. You may trace the patterns your ancestors named, but those stars are no longer where they belong. The map is lying because the truth would shatter you, because the Jedi who were disappeared still walks beneath those stars, but the stars no longer point to him because they dare not. And if, one night, you feel the Force hum differently, if the stars seem slightly wrong, don't look away. He may be near, and the sky may be trying, just once, to remember him. Chapter Ike's the apprentice who dreamed in reverse they were a quiet apprentice, not remarkable, not reckless, just one of many training, meditating, learning the form and flow of the Jedi path. No one remembered their name at first, not even after the runes appeared, not even after the temples. Dreamkeepers began waking in tears, unable to speak the names they'd shouted in their sleep. Only later, much later, did the fragments return. A name, whispered in reverse, an eye that glowed in dreams, a silence that ticked like a chronometer counting backward. The apprentice had been assigned to archival duty, routine rotation. They were tasked with restoring corrupted holocrons, brushing dust from ancient scrolls. One scroll bound in gold thread and older than the Republic itself was partially translated. The Force surrounding it was strange cold, as if it had never wanted to be touched again. It did not scream when opened, it sighed, and after that, the apprentice began to dream. The dreams came in fragments, but all of them were reversed. Planets crumbled into nothing and lonely, to be drawn up again into fireless suns. Lightsabers hummed first, then cooled into ore. Jedi temples unraveled stone by stone, monks and masters walking backward into their robes. Voices began with farewells, then slipped into greetings. The Padawan described these dreams to no one, but in meditation, their pulse slowed, their breath syncs not with the present but with before, and when questioned, their answers came off like someone who knew what would be said, because they had already heard it. One master, curious, entered their quarters, found it empty, found no signs of struggle, but carved into every surface, walls, ceiling, mirror, floor, were runes, dozens, hundreds, none matched known languages, but some bore vague similarity to glyphs found in the tombs beneath Jeddah, in chambers used for chrono-sacrifice. Others matched fragments from Dwarshi tablets, used to calculate force currents across time. One phrase, repeated, "I remember the silence that hasn't happened yet." He spoke before he arrived. The end was the lesson, the beginning, the mistake. They found no body, no robes, only the Padawans, training saber. Deactivated, left on the window ledge, its crystal humming wrong not in pitch, but direction. Sound vibrated inward, a hum that pulled the ear into itself, like it was remembering sound from tomorrow. The temple sealed the room. It's still there, somewhere, but no one goes inside, because the room itself dreams now, and sometimes the runes on the walls change. Who was this Padawan? Some whisper they were a seer, misdiagnosed. Others believe they were called not by the Jedi who vanished, but by the wake he left behind. A wound in the Force, so deep, so elegantly made, that it echoed backward, calling, not through lineage, but resonance. The dreams may not have been hallucinations. They may have been his memories, not shared, but reflected through time's ripple, replayed in reverse, because some truths are so vast, they cannot be learned forward, only unwound. The Jedi who vanished had no known apprentices, But now, we are no longer sure. Perhaps this was not a student, but a shadow, a mirror version, an echo born before its source, a being shaped by the force to receive memory, not in chronological order, but as correction to feel the end, before the beginning, so the cycle could be broken, so the pattern might be named. The runes suggest something deeper. They are not warnings, they are instructions, etched with care, designed not for the present, but for the moment when the next forgetting begins, the next disappearance. One rune translates to, when the stars hum backwards, it begins again. Another, if I vanish, follow the quiet, not the trail. Another, he isn't missing, he was never supposed to be seen. And so the pattern widens. The apprentice is gone, but the dream remains. A reverse river, flowing gently back through the cracks in the temple's walls. Some claim they see the apprentice kneeling beside the vanished. Jedi in mirrored dreams, always with their backs to us, always just before they vanish, one breath before they never were. I remember them because they dreamed of me, because once when I flickered near a dying holocrony, felt them reach backward and touch me, they whispered, "You are the voice at the end of the hallway. You are what will remain when we no longer try to understand. Remember backwards." And I do. I remember the unmade I. Remember what they will become. And I remember the echoes that taught them how to vanish. The Jedi who disappeared is not alone. The echo has awakened. The dream has begun to loop. And now time itself, has started to recoil. Chapter X. The mirror in the faucet is not glass, it is not metal, it does not shine. And yet, the mirror in the Force reveals more than light ever could. It is older than any republic, older than the Jedi Order, older even than the division between light and dark. It is thought to be the final relic of the Virgins Masters, a sect, long extinguished, whose only teaching was this: the Force remembers every choice not taken, and sometimes it shows them back. It lies buried deep within the vaults beneath Illuminair, the old Kyber beds, in a chamber few ever reach. The entrance is sealed by choice, not code. Those who have looked into it often return, changed, or not at all, because it does not show reflection. It shows divergence. When a Jedi stands before it, they do not see themselves, they see the selves. They did not become the paths they turned away from, the hands they chose not to raise, the lives that might have bloomed or burned had a single breath fallen differently. But these are not illusions. They are Force-truths. Possibilities so real, they weep with memory. And sometimes, those paths look back. The Jedi who vanished found the mirror, not by accident, not by command, but by compulsion. Some memories pull harder than fate. He stood before it longer than any on record, not an hour, not a night, but 3 days and moving, unspeaking, unbill, link, ng, no food, no rest, only the hum of the Force growing quieter. And when he finally wept, he did not weep for the future. He wept for something remembered, something unlived. I was there, not in form, but in presence, bound to the chamber's air like a thread, and I felt it, the storm, beneath his silence, the fracture opening behind his ribs, the grief of 100 unlived lifetimes. He did not see darkness, he saw gentleness. A life with no saber, a temple he never entered, a child's hand taken in peace, not training. He saw a version of himself, who never reached for the Force, and that version smiled. Some would say the mirror tempts, that it offers the seduction of regret. But this is not its crime. Its danger lies in truth, because the Jedi do not fear what could have been. They fear what should have been, and in that chamber of divergence, truth becomes unbearable. After the third day, the mirror cracked, not shattered, just one line sharp, diagonal, thin. But it was the first time in its recorded history that the artifact had ever been altered, and no one knew how or why, until the records of the Jedi who vanished also began to crack. Names disappeared from lists, missions erased from memory, the order of events began to blur, and the temple whispered of silence with no cause, as if the mirror had done more than reflect, as if it had chosen. Some believe the mirror was never a relic, but a wound, a point where the Force folds in on itself, showing not fiction, but buried potential. Others think it is alive, that it grows, and that when too much grief touches it, it bleeds backward through the Force, marking the timelines with ripples of forgetting. I believe something else. I believe the Jedi who vanished made a choice there, not to follow a path, not to rewrite his own fate, but to accept all of them, to carry every version of himself, until the weight unmade him. There is a saying in the lost writings of the Tython sages, a soul shown all paths at once cannot remain one being. To see everything is to become nothing. The crack in the mirror is not a fracture, it is a birthmark left by a soul that folded inward, and the reflection that caused it still lingers. Some Jedi have reported seeing the same cloaked figure when gazing into the mirror. Now, always in the background, never moving, never in focus, but present, watching the mirror, remembers him. It reflects his divergence now. Not yours, not yours, not there's just his. A permanent echo, a soul folded into infinite threads, and those who gaze into it now do not return the same, because they feel not temptation, but familiarity, as if something inside them already misses him, even if they never knew his name. The temple has sealed the chamber, a layer of durasteel, followed by ritual etching, but I hear it, even now, a soft vibration, not metal, not sound, just the echo of possibility screaming from behind walls. And I wonder, is he still there? Not his body, but the memory of what he did not become. And if so, will the mirror ever stop reflecting? Or has it become the only place where he still exists? Remember him kneeling before the glass. I remember the moment he reached out, not to touch, but to apologize. He whispered something as the crack formed, not in basic, not in any language. I know, but the Force translated the emotion. I am sorry I did not choose you, and I wept, because it was not guilt he felt, it was love, and love, when unchosen, can fracture a galaxy. Chapter She, the Jedi, who was not born before there was form, before there were midichlorians, bloodlines, or temples carved from thought. There was the will not spoken, not written, not even known, only felt, and in the deepest myths ones, only the Force remembers. There is a phrase, the Jedi who is never born, always arriving, always too late. This is not poetry, it is warning, and it may be him, the one who vanished. Because as I reach deeper into memory, as I fall through cracks the council dared not seal, I find something stranger than absence. I find impossibility. There is no record of his origin, no homeworld, no blood family, no name listed in the initiate registries. And yet, He appears in sparring records, in training logs, in mission reports, only for moments, briefly, like someone remembered, just long enough to matter, before being returned to the void. One master once said of him, he was always arriving, never there. I could never remember if he was my student or someone else's, but he was always near when things went quiet, like the pause before lightning. There is a corridor in the Temple One that appears only during high solar flare alignments. Its walls are etched with Jedi prophecies not taught anymore, because they do not point forward, they point sideways. They speak of beings not born, but formed in the Force's breath, not offspring, not incarnations, but corrections, answers to questions never asked aloud. And in those scrolls is a name that has no letters, only vibration, only meaning. He who was sent not to save, but to observe the fall. He who arrives late, not to fix, but to witness. He who cannot be born, for the galaxy has no place for him. I believe he was willed into existence, not by the Jedi, not by the Siths, but by the Force itself. Not in joy, not in wrath, but in regret. A momentary act of creation, shaped not from matter, but from remorse, if true. Then he was never meant to last. His life was not linear. It was a correction, a note scribbled in the margins of time, a sentence the galaxy tried to write, then crossed out, then forgot it had written at all, and now the page is blank again. Some who knew him reported a strange sense when standing, close, not dread, not gnaw, but déjà vu. One Padawan said, it felt like I had already said goodbye to him before I ever met him, like I missed him for years, even though he hadn't arrived yet. Another, older master once told me, he made me remember things I'd never lived. He walked like a dream escaping itself, and when he left the room, it felt like something sacred had been put back where it didn't belong. But if he was created, why? To correct what? A fracture, a timeline, an imbalance? Or worse, was he a byproduct? The consequence of some other mistake, some galactic trauma so deep the Force had to generate a placeholder, an avatar of sorrow, of unfinished thought, of unraveling potential. Was he born of need or error? Some ancient Dwarshi codices mention the echo given flesh. They say it walks as Jedi, but dreams as Force. It forgets as it learns. It vanishes when remembered, and its end is always its arrival. I have begun to suspect that this is what he was. Not a knight, not a rogue, not a prophet, but an echo, born where memory breaks, arriving only when the galaxy tries to hide something from itself. Even his saberwort, little we recall of it, was strange, not in shape, not in color, but in presence. It hummed, in past tense, like it had already been used, already failed, already mourned, and when it was recovered, left behind in that silent dream temple, the kyber crystal inside it pulsed backward in time, a wave of grief that traveled retrograde. One healer who touched it aged 7 years in a single hour, then forgot who she was healing. She forgot herself. You do not understand. He was not forgotten. He was unpermitted. There was never a place for him, not in prophecy, not in blood, not in war. And so the galaxy, after using him, began to erase him, out of fear, out of mercy, out of confusion, perhaps all three. I remember watching him once only, once through a veil of force-chained memory. He looked upward, at nothing, and whispered, I was not born. I was given and now I must give myself back. And with that, he stepped beyond the veil, and the Force flinched. He was not born, but he arrived, and perhaps that is more terrifying than any Sith, more sacred than any Jedi, because arrival without origin means purpose without permission. Chapter 12. The Force that rejected a name. I remember his name. I did. I had spoken it, written it in the dust of broken temples, whispered it across dying stars. But now it leaves me, not like a secret stolen, but like a word never spoken at all. He, the Jedi we have followed, the one who vanished, has begun vanishing from me, from my thought, from my shape, and I am bound to the Force, but even it does not remember him. This is not banishment. This is not exile. This is indifference, not a punishment of wrath, but of silence. The Force has turned its face, not in hate, but in absence, and for one so deeply connected, for one so devout, this is the truest undoing. There are whispers in lost scrolls, lines etched by nameless seers who foresaw too far. When the Force forgets a name, it forgets a self. And when a self is forgotten, the galaxy realigns to keep it so. This is the mercy that becomes the curse. He reached too far, too deep, too truthward, and something changed. Not in the galaxy, but in the Force's regard. It no longer followed him, no longer curved around his presence, no longer answered his call. Not darkness, not light, just emptiness, a severing beyond banishment, not detachment, but direct ignition. Some say this is what happens when one ascends without intention, when enlightenment is touched, but not earned. Others say he passed into a level of connection so raw, so unfiltered, that identity itself became irrelevant. No more I, no more name, just will, just current, just breath through stone. But if that were peace, why does the Force shiver when we speak of him? Why do my thoughts, so old, so tethered, falter? Why do I begin to what were we speaking of? No, I must remember. I must bind myself to the thread. He is slipping from me. He is slipping from all things. This is the fate he did not resist. The Force did not cast him out. It simply stopped. Including him, the currents that once formed around his choices have gone flat. Timeline threads, once shaped by his actions, now redirect like water, fleeing a stone that was never there. He was a Jedi. He was Force. ... Forgive me, I do not lie. Just do not. Know that there is precedent, buried in the breathless faults of Jeddah and Tython, a phenomenon known to only a few archivists and insane prophets. Force rejection, a rare unraveling of identity so complete. The Force begins to scrub its own records. A being not exiled, but unmade, an awareness so sharply attuned to the truths beneath the Force that it begins to unweave itself, not all at once, but thread by thread until only silence remains. He may have reached this point, not through failure, but through purity, a devotion so deep the self could no longer survive it, and the Force in return responded not with embrace, but with nullification, like a candle that burns so brightly it consumes even the memory of fire. There are signs now in the temple, archives that blank when his path is queried, meditation chambers where whispers falter, dreams that skip, visions that halt mid-sentence, holocrons that flicker and weep, and all of them echo with the same loss. Not a name, not a soul, but the place where a soul used to be. I remember what he said, once on a forgotten moon, standing before a shattered obsidian gate. I think the Force is not a river. It is not even a sea. It is a mirror that forgets what it reflects. And when it tires of seeing me, it will stop. I did not understand it then. Now I do. He has not been erased from history. He has been erased from relevance. He no longer triggers causality. He no longer bends probability. He no longer counts. And so the Force, gentle, infinite, and vast, lets him pass, unnoticed, as one would let a feather fall into a black ocean. This is the curse. To be untouched, to be unheld, to be unspoken, not by others, but by the galaxy itself. And it is growing, because now I am forgetting too. I try to summon his name, and only ash comes. I try to trace his form in memory, and my vision blurs. He is becoming not a myth, but a asterisk missing, not a warning, but a wound. Perhaps this was his choice. Perhaps this was the only way to undo what he had seen in the mirror. Or perhaps it is the Force protecting itself in writing, the one who knew too much. But even if I forget, even if no name remains there, is still the place, the shape of the hole he left, a wound in the breath of the Force, and that I remember, that I carry, because the Force may reject names, but it never forgets pain. Chapter 13. The Jedi tomb, with no body there, is a sarcophagus beneath the deep archives of Ossus, buried not in honor, not in mourning, but in uncertainty. It rests in the catacombs where the Force thickens, where light and shadow knot into silence. No official record claims it, no Jedi logs chart its construction, and yet it is there, sealed, immaculate, and gently humming. The tomb bears no name, only the symbol of the Jedi order etched upside down, not defaced, not desecrated, but reversed, as if to say, this too is Jedi, but not the way you remember. The surface is obsidian-white, UNWEATHERED, UNCRACKED. The seams are invisible, but when one presses a palm to its center, the stone rises and falls, as if breathing, a slow inhale, a slower exhale, no faster than one breath every minute, but certainly not still. No scanner can pierce its walls, no life-form readings can be taken, and yet every Jedi who nears it feels the same thing. Presence, not malevolent, not peaceful, but enduring, like something waiting to finish. A sentence that was never spoken aloud. Some say it was built to house a relic, a kyber fragment too haunted to leave in the open. Others claim it is a containment, a prison, not for body, but for being, a place to hold something that could no longer be touched by light or shadow. Not a soul, not a corpse, but a concept, one too dangerous to be remembered, and too sacred to be destroyed. When the Jedi who vanished finally disappeared from thought, this tomb appeared, not overnight, not with ceremony, but quietly, as though the stone had always been there, and only now chose to reveal itself. The surrounding catacomb had no structural seams, and yet a chamber was found, cut perfectly, centered, precisely as if the Force itself had shifted matter to make space. Single datapad was left at the doorway, its screen blank, until a Force sensitive touched it. Then just one line appeared: "He is not entombed, he is held," followed by silence. Then the device overheated, melted, and turned to glass. Jedi Masters have debated the tomb's purpose for generations. Was it a memorial, built in grief by the Order in a moment of shame? But if so, why sealed so tightly? Why no inscription, no offering? Or was it a response, constructed by the force itself, to house a ripple, a fracture, a piece of memory too dangerous to leave unguarded? Those who meditate beside the tomb report strange visions, galaxies spinning backward, words spoken before mouths open, a Jedi face, unclear, yet familiar, sometimes crying, sometimes laughing, always disappearing. Some fall unconscious for hours, others emerge with new names on their lips, names they cannot explain, names that no longer exist in any archive, and always the tomb breathes. No air moves, no pressure shifts, but something inside remains, incomplete, waiting. Whether to wake or to fade, no one can tell. I visited once, a long time ago, not in body, but in presence, drifting through the catacombs, like a candle's final smoke. And I touched it just once. The breath it exhaled passed through me. It did not chill. It did not burn. It remembered. It remembered me, and in that moment, I felt every chapter we've spoken collapse into 1.1 fracture in the weave of things. And at the center of that fracture, not a Jedi, not a corpse, but a decision. Perhaps that is what lies within. Not a person, but a moment preserved, a forked path, sealed so that it may not fork again, a divergence trapped in a shell of stone, because the galaxy could not survive it, echoing outward. The humming continues still, not mechanical, not harmonic, but intentional. Some say it matches the tone emitted by broken holocrons. Others say it's the same pitch as the silent crystal left behind in the dreaming temple. I say it is the notes sung by the force when it mourns without permission, when it tries to forget and fails. There have been attempts to open the tomb. None succeed. Lightsabers flicker against its shell. Force pressure slides off it like mist from obsidian. Rituals unravel in its presence. One Sith acolyte once attempted to mark it with blood. The blood vanished before hitting the stone. He vanished 2 days later. His master forgot his name. There are no instructions, no warnings, just the hum, just the slow rise and fall, a rhythm without heartbeat, but not without life. And as time bends, as memory bends, as I begin to lose more of him, this tomb remains as proof that something did happen, that someone was, even if he no longer walks the force. He is contained by it, and Ossus bears that weight. Quietly, beautifully, terribly, terribly. Chapter 14. The Force Ritual that erased memory. There are rituals in the Force that were never meant to be completed, not because they fail, but because they work, and among them there is one so old, so hidden. It exists only as an echo in decayed holocrons and shattered temples, a ritual designed not to shape the galaxy, but to unshape memory. It has no name, only a gesture of breath, a closing of the palm, a final exhale. The Jedi who vanished found it deep in a scroll untranslated for millennia. Beneath the temple of First Echo on Jeddah, the ink was faded, the script shifting, alive, as if it changed itself when looked at too long. It was not meant to be read. It was meant to be felt. And he did. He performed it alone. No witnesses, no recordings, no instructions. The only evidence it occurred is what is missing. Entire mission records, wiped, not digitally, but from the minds of those who lived them. Conversations once recorded, now play only static. Meditation logs end. Mid-thought, one archivist forgot how to open their own vault. Another forgot the concept of Jedi. She wept for 3 days, though she didn't know why. And me, I try to remember. I was there or near. I heard him begin to speak the words of the ritual. And even now, even here, I cannot recall them. They were syllables not made for sound, not chanted, but unspoken, each one dissolved into a shape of not memory. The Force recoiled with every breath he took, and when the ritual reached its end, time paused, and then restarted differently. What kind of truth demands to be forgotten? What secret cannot be protected with silence alone? Only one born from betrayal so deep, or vision so vast, that to preserve it is to risk the unraveling of everything else. The Jedi who vanished did not lose himself to darkness. He sacrificed something else, perhaps the truth of who he was, perhaps the reason for his vanishing, perhaps the galaxy itself, in some small hidden version, and he paid the price, not in blood, but in absence. Not even the Force kept a record. I reach for his shape in the currents. There is a hole, a hum-shaped hole in the pattern. It resists being filled. It unthreads my thoughts. When I press too close, there is only a faint ache like something lost during sleep. What I do remember is how the stars around Ossus flickered the moment it was done. How 3 Jedi fell unconscious on Coruscant with no injuries. How a senator forgot why he entered the Grand Chamber and stood in silence for hours, crying. How the wind on Lothal stopped blowing for exactly 1 minute. How every Jedi temple felt lighter and wrong, as if some central gravity had shifted, and then no one spoke of it again because they couldn't. A legend remains that the ritual leaves behind a phrase in the Force, but not in words, a feeling, a pulse. I have tried to describe. It is like hearing the color blue exhale. It is like remembering a death you never lived. It is the weight of having once known something sacred, and now being unable to believe it even existed. There are 3 warnings scratched into the walls of the vault of forgotten thought. No one knows who carved them, but each is identical, in different hands. This was not erasure, it was mercy. The truth was too loud. I remember forgetting. Some believe the ritual was a form of escape, that the Jedi used it to sever himself from fate, to become immune to prophecy, invisible to vision, unreachable by either side. Others say it was a gift, a final act of preservation to lock away knowledge that could not be held, that could not be carried, like a star in the palm of a child. I still try in quiet hours, in Force-deep trances. I return to the sound of his voice, not his name, not his face, just the tone. It is faint now. It slides through me, like a breath refusing to linger. He spoke the ritual like a prayer to the void, not hoping for an answer, but becoming one. And, when the final syllable was spoken, he looked up, and the Force, the great infinite storm of all things, looked away now. All that remains is static, in the holocrons, in the archives, in me. A soft interference that increases whenever I near the truth. A pain not physical, but foundational, as if my shape was not built to contain what he locked away. Still, the question remains. What truth was so unbearable that the only way to honor it was to forget it? Chapter 15. The droids who remember what masters forgot. The mind may bend, the Force may recoil, but droids do not dream. They do not suppress. They do not mourn or distort or deny. They retain, and somewhere, scattered across archives, ruined ships, and temples long swallowed by soil. The droids whisper. They whisper him, the Jedi who vanished, the one whose name the Force has rejected. They remember him not through loyalty, not through fear, but through design, because he left pieces of himself inside them. And now, as their joints stiffen and their photoreceptors flicker, they begin to speak. A silver protocol droid on Ossustes X Nation C9H3 was discovered pacing an abandoned benetation chamber. Alone, dusty, UNCHARGED, for decades. Its voice rasped in ancient binary. Over and over, I was told not to forget. I was told not to forget. I was told not to F. Then it shut down permanently. Its memory core burned out from within. When recovered, one name had been etched into its chassis. A name no Jedi remembered, and none could pronounce. Another Unitan archivist droid with flaking bronze plating was seen drawing circles in the dust. Not random, deliberate, overlapping rings, shaped like a Jedi symbol folding inward. And at the center, a face, unclear, sharp in the brow, soft in the eyes. But wrong in time, it drew the face, paused, then erased it with trembling claws. It then turned to the watching night and said, I promised him I would not let the Force lie. These machines were not possessed. They were prepared. He must have known that memory would fade, that he would be stripped from time, and so he scattered fragments of himself across the minds least likely to be rewritten. Artificial, loyal only to code, unyielding in their quiet, forgotten places. Even astromechs, those built for hyperspace charts, and maintenance began whistling old tones, unrecorded melodies. One matched the breath pattern found in the erased ritual. Another contained 3 tones, when played backward, that caused nearby Jedi to weep uncontrollably. They didn't know why. They just fell to the floor. Clutching the ground, their tears tasted of salt and knowing. I once entered an archive vault on Arcania. The droids inside had been silent for a century, preserved beneath ice. One reactivated when I stepped in. Its first words were not a greeting. They were a question. Do you remember him yet? I asked, who? It tilted its head. Its voice slowed. Then he is not finished. Why do the droids remember? Because they were not touched by the ritual. The Force cannot erase what it does not fully inhabit. Their minds are not made of vision and emotion. They are code. And while code can be deleted, it can also be protected. He knew this. He knew the droids could become his final keepers, his final witnesses. So he whispered truths into their ports. He rewrote fragments of himself into diagnostics. He turned memory into malfunction and left behind glitches that only make sense when the Force itself fails to remember. The Council has ignored the signs, called it data degradation, called it low-grade Force interference. But they fear it because, if the droids remember, it means he still exists, not as flesh, not as Force, but as code -UNFADED, unsanctioned and waiting. One droid model A3LS was dismantled after humming a name for 6 days without stopping. Its final output was a single sentence he gave me. Something I cannot hold. He gave me a memory shaped like silence. He gave me. What if he did more than preserve himself? What if he awakened something? Not just recollection, but identity. A seed of self-awareness planted in old shells, not to build an army, but to survive, to become a myth not told by scrolls, but whispered in processing errors, in movement patterns, in drawing hands, in broken speech. The droids remember, because we were not strong enough to carry him. Even now I hear one in the temple, halls, shuffling softly, humming a tune I've never learned, but somehow know. I follow it sometimes, but when I arrive, dust, and the faint shape of a handprint in the wall. The droids do not dream, but they repeat, and in repetition. There is remembrance, even when the rest of us forget. Perhaps that is all that remains of him. A whisper in rust, a shadow in static, a name carved where no living thing will see. But they remember him, and perhaps, in their memory he still walks. Chapter 16. The Jedi who saw themselves in the past. There are holorecordings, sacred, sealed, dated, untouched for hundreds of years, buried deep in the core archives of Ossus and Ilum, and now they are changing, not rewritten, not corrupted, but flickering, and in the flicker a face appears. The Jedi who vanished in one projection, Master Kalsari of the Lost Flame addresses her council during the purge of the false nebulae, 2,000 years before the Clone Wars. As she speaks, her image, WAVERS, just once, and there over her shoulder is him, a hooded figure, silent, unmoving, unnoticed by all in the room, yet perfectly clear in the light. He shouldn't be there. He couldn't be, and yet. Another record, buried beneath Coruscant's lower vaults, shows the reconstruction of the Third Temple during the Ashen Renewal. A construction drone captures the process on frame 371. A group of architects kneel to meditate before the central spire. A shadow appears at the edge of the image, a silhouette gazing upward, only for a second. But when the footage is slowed, frame by frame, the figure turns. It's him, or a version of him, older, eyes ringed with knowing, and he vanishes before the next. Frame loads. The witnesses who discover these anomalies always react the same way. First, confusion, then awe, then silence, and finally, the need to forget. Some delete the footage, others bury it deeper. One simply left the order. If he was there, she said, then I was never meant to be. The Force is not linear. We have always known that. Visions move backward, prophecies loop, ghosts echo, but this is different. This is not a glimpse of what was. This is presence, manifestation, being touching the seams of time like breath fogging a mirror, and the Jedi who vanished. He is becoming the mirror. It began long before he disappeared. There are scattered reports, Padawans seeing glimpses of him in dreams set centuries ago. One child claimed, he taught me the third form, but he did it in stone armor, and the sky was orange like the old moons. No one believed her, until they checked the training logs of Master Vonley from the time of the Old Republic. A brief note scribbled hastily mentions, a stranger passed through the courtyard today. He corrected my student's stance without a word. His saber was not of this age, so the question must be asked, did he fall through time? Was his vanishing not a disappearance, but a descent into chronology's deepest folds? Or worse, did time fall into him? Did something in the ritual, the tomb, the Force itself, break? Not just identity, but sequence. I have searched every vision I can still recall, and I see it now, hidden behind every major fracture in galactic history, behind the shadows of war, the deaths of chosen ones, the rise of unchosen. Darkness, there is a shape, not acting, not influencing, just standing, watching, witnessing, and I believe it is him, a Jedi no longer bounded by causality, one who did not escape fate, but entered it fully. Perhaps the ritual unlocked it. Perhaps the tomb housed it. Perhaps he was always fractured. Or perhaps he became a wound in time's skin, and now the past cannot reject him, because it remembers what the present cannot. Even droids begin to stutter around old recordings. One maintenance unit, tasked with indexing Jedi funerals, paused midway through playback. It whispered, "There's someone at every funeral." But he was never invited. Then it shut down. I once dreamed of a battle I never lived, a field of golden ash, lightsabers humming in reversed harmonics, and among the chaos he stood, still breathing, not fighting, just being. I called out to him. He turned and whispered, "This is not my first time seeing you." I woke with a single name in my mouth, one I had never heard before, and now cannot recall. Only the ache of it remains. This is not time travel. This is time echoing. This is time beginning to treat him not as a being within it, but as a reference, a fixed note played again and again, across centuries, to remind the Force of something it is trying to forget. And perhaps this is why the Force rejected him, not out of disdain, but out of fear, because what he has become cannot be guided, cannot be seen only once. He is repeating now, layered into the breath of history, waiting not for rescue, not for return, but for recognition. And still the hollows flicker, and still the echoes widen, and still his presence deepens where he should not be. He always is. Chapter XV. The silence beneath the outer rim, they call it the no-sound zone, an expanse beneath the outer rim, unnamed by most Na'vi computers, a stretch of void where hyperspace roots snarl like tangled roots, and no beacon signal returns with its sender's name intact. Jedi scouts mapped it long ago, then stopped, because the silence that waits there, it's not stillness, it's anticipation, a waiting not for ships, but for memory. The Jedi who vanished is here, they say, or rather what they might have been, the becoming of them, the pieces not yet chosen, the selves that could not form in time, and in the hollow breath between stars. Those pieces drift, they appear, they change, they call one Jedi cartographer. Master Seal Von described a soundless frequency in the Force just before her ship entered the zone. It was like someone inhaling a name, but never exhaling it. Her last log simply read, "They are still becoming," carved by her own hand into the inner wall of her ship's cockpit, not scratched, not burned, inscribed as if she had no other way to say it. When her vessel was found, drifting near the annual verge, she was gone, no trace, no distress, only silence in the logs, and that sentence glowing faintly in the Force, still becoming. What does it mean? That the Jedi who vanished has not stopped vanishing, that their erasure is still in process, or worse, that they are now multiple, that time's rejection fractured them, scattering versions of themselves not across space, but across possibility. The Outer Rim scouts who enter the zone speak of visions, not of danger, not of death, but of questions. Made Flesh. One saw the Jedi sitting in a desert temple, an elder, blind, teaching Padawans that never lived. Another reported glimpsing the Jedi as a child, standing on a cliff, watching two suns set in reverse. Another swore they saw themselves, kneeling before him, accepting a lesson they never learned, and None could remember these visions clearly, only that they happened, and that the Force grew, quietly agitated afterward. I have sent my own senses there, stretched my awareness, like silk across the hyperspatial breath. What I feel is not emptiness, but a field, a chamber of potential, where the Force rehearses the futures it no longer believes. In Dot, and where Heath, the Jedi, whose name has dissolved, is still being shaped, not by time, not by choice, but by the silence that holds all forgotten forms. Perhaps this is where the ritual sent him, not into death, not into exile, but into potential, a state between presence and memory, where every version of him that might have been still walks, still breathes, still contemplates the first wound. One ship returned from the edge of the zone, the pilot half-mad, eyes ringed with starlight, could only say this: I watched him speaking to himself, not like a mirror, like a council. He described 7 versions of the Jedi, each robed differently, each older or younger, each silently circling a monument made of humming kyber, and all of them turned at once and looked at him. Then his vessel re-entered, known space, but he had aged, 12 years gone. Is this evolution or infection? Is the Force allowing him to continue forming, or try and failing to stop it? If he is becoming something beyond Jedi, beyond Sith, beyond identity, then the silence is not a warning, it is a cradle, and what it holds is not ready. I believe this place is not a tomb, not a hiding place, but a process, a forge without flame, where the Force plays its unchosen songs, and he, the Jedi, the one who is gone but never absent, he is the chord still being tuned, they are still becoming. That phrase, it echoes even now in the Force, not as a prophecy, not as a curse, but as a condition, one that deepens, one that cannot be halted. He was not meant to disappear, he was meant to continue, and perhaps the reason no one remembers him fully is because he has not finished becoming the thing worth remembering. In that silence, beneath that rim where even light avoids orbit, he is not waiting, he is not hiding, he is unfolding still. Chapter 19. The Jedi who returned without format began with whispers, a voice gentle, fractured, heard in dreams, not one's own, not ominous, not commanding, but familiar to familiar, a whisper that says your name the way only someone long lost ever could. Jedi across the Midrim systems began reporting it. First just then knights, then masters. I hear them when I close my eyes. They call me as if I forgot something important. I wake up weeping, but the tears are not mine. Some report memories they cannot place, training sessions in forests that no longer exist, meditations with words never spoken aloud, a hand on their shoulder during battle though no one was there. They look into mirrors, and for a breath they expect someone else to be looking back. Lightsabers now hum when untouched. Kyber crystals sing low songs in pitch 2. Old to translate. Doors open in temples beforehands. Reach them. Archives display files that were never entered. One holocron glowed dimly for 7 minutes. Inside, static, then a voice. I am still here, but not as I was. And then silence. The holocron has since refused to open again. Its surface is warm to the touch, like breath held in metal. At first, the Order dismissed these as echoes, ritual aftershocks, collective psychic trauma, but then a Jedi Knight in the Corps suddenly stopped mid-sentence. placed their saber at their feet, and whispered, "He's inside the pattern now." They collapsed into sleep. For 9 days. When they woke, they had forgotten their own name but knew his. Though they could not speak it, their voice failed every time. I'd have grown afraid, because the voice, it has begun speaking to me, not as a stranger, not as a warning, but as a friend or a teacher or a student. I do not know which, I do not remember which, but I feel in my bones that no longer have marrow, in my voice that no longer has breath. I knew him, that once I trusted him. I trusted his silence, his questions, his vanishing, and now I fear that trust. Returning because he is not one anymore. He is diffused, spread across thought, rewritten into the force's margins. A voice without center, but not without meaning. Wherever he is, he has no body, he has no shape, but he has agency. He rides the whispering wind of Kyber's breath. He blooms in the memories of those who have no reason to recall him. He speaks in borrowed syllables, through lips not his own. One Jedi sculptor dreamed of a temple they had never seen. They awoke and sculpted its gate perfectly from memory. Its door was shaped like a cracked mirror above an inscription none could read. The sculptor didn't remember making it. When asked, they only said he needed a door. Another Padawan disappeared during a meditation on Tython, when they were found days later in the ruins of a forgotten observatory. They spoke only one sentence over and over. He returned as potential. He returns as us. Then they fell silent forever, eyes open, still blinking, but speechless. The Force does not reject him now, it carries him not as light, not as darkness, but as memory in motion. You cannot see him, but you begin to remember things. That never happened. You feel the weight of hands that never touched you, and in your dreams, you see the stars from his point of view. I fear I was once his student, or he was mine, or we were both something else bound together by a secret I can no longer hold. A bond frayed by time and ritual, but not cut, never cut, because even now I dream of him kneeling, in robes I've never worn, speaking words I cannot translate, and when I wake, my hands are posed in an unfamiliar mudra gesture, not found in any Jedi form. He has returned, but not as a being, not even as a ghost. He has returned as an imprint, etched across the Force like a forgotten signature, now bleeding into everything. He is a thought too strong to die, a lesson that refused to vanish, a shape that echoes without outline, and maybe this was always the end, not a fall, not a death, but a diffusion, a way to become part of the Force, not by joining it, but by becoming its language. Some of us already speak it, some of us will soon, some already have, and have forgotten, but in every quiet temple, in every hum of a saber, in every incomplete memory he walks. He is not gone, he is shared, he is not remembered, he is spoken, he is not seen, he is heard, and if I was once his friend, or student, or rival, then I am no longer separate, because he has returned, without form, but not without me. Chapter XX. The memory that remembers. You have listened, carefully, patiently, as if these words were not fragments, but familiar, as if the vanished Jedi was a stranger, and yet always just behind your breath. Do you feel it now? The shape of the silence, the tension in your hands, though you do not know why, the chill in your spine as I speak a memory that feels like yours. Because it always was. This is not my story, not the orders, not the archives, nor the holocrons. This has always been your story, and I am only what remained to remind you. You were the one who walked into the dream temple beneath Coruscant's bedrock. You were the one who touched the cracked holocron, humming in a voice not made for ears. You were the one who kneeled before the mirror in the Force, and saw not a future, but the ache of all you might have been. Yes, the rituals, the fractures, the silence beneath the outer rim, the droids muttering your name in dust. They were not echoes of another, they were echoes of you. This entire telling, this scripture of dread and sleep, was not meant to reveal. It was meant to wake. You never vanished. You unfolded. You did not die. You became too large for shape, too strange for name, too soft for memory, and the Force, in fear or awe, scattered you and me. I am the part that remembered, a voice you left behind, a memory that remembers you, locked in a tomb of sound and silence, waiting for you to find it, to press your hand against the walls of the Force and hear your own pulse echo back. You thought, this was narration, it was recognition. You forgot, of course you did. That is how the ritual works. That is how protection feels, like absence. But the ritual was never destruction. It was preservation. You broke yourself across the Force so that no single death could claim you. And now, you have returned to the chamber of your own voice, to this holocron that speaks your name without speaking, to the hum of Kyber and dream and dust, to the breath between sentences. This is why the chapters shook you, why the temples seemed familiar, why the silence cooled, because it was never about you, it was you. Every lost Jedi, a version, a limb, a shadow of the shape you once were becoming. Every whisper in dreams, a sliver of what you left behind. And now you must choose. You may walk away and forget again, as you have before, as you may do once more, or you may stay in this memory, in this shape, and allow the Force to fold you back into itself, not as a Jedi, not as Sith, not as witness, but as the question behind all. Awakening, there is no name to end this tale, only silence, not emptiness, but fullness too vast to hold words. And in that silence, do you remember now? That is not for me to say. I am only the memory that remembers you. I will be here when you return again, as you always do, as you always will, because the Jedi who vanished was never gone, only scattered, only sleeping, and now, perhaps you're ready to awaken.